Bats, Balls and Breaking Zones podcast. With me today is a returning guest, Andrew.
Hello everyone, it's so great to be back.
Today we're going to be talking about the upcoming Formula One season. So we're just going to do a quick preview and our predictions. We're going to go through it team by team, starting with Williams.
So I think for Williams, I think we'll see an improvement from them this season compared to last season. They obviously had a very difficult 2019 season, and it really wasn't great to see such a great team like Williams so far behind. But I feel like there could be a bit of a revival with Williams, and yeah, I feel like they could even score a few more points this season. And they've already improved on preseason testing, so it looks like they have a bit of a foundation to go forward with.
So you said that you think they'll improve in terms of scoring points. Do you think they can improve in terms of the standings and finish ahead of someone?
No, I think everyone else is just too strong. Every other team for me this season looks strong. It's crazy. You may not agree, but everyone looks pretty good.
What about Haas? I don't feel that they've been that strong, and their driver pairing, Magnussen's a bit inconsistent, and Grosjean's also.
Okay, yeah, Grosjean was poor last season, I will give you that. But Magnussen's quick. I don't think Haas was poor last season, it was just the tyres. They were quick in qualifying. I mean, Magnussen was qualifying 5th in some races, I think, if my memory serves correct. But it's just they couldn't get the tyre strategy right in the race. So I'm sure that they've worked hard to fix that.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you don't score points for qualifying.
No, that's what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is that there's a chance that they sorted out the gremlins that was stopping them from scoring points last season.
Okay, so you do think they are strong enough to finish ahead of Williams?
Yeah.
Going back to Williams, in terms of an inter-driver battle, who do you see coming out on top?
If I'm being brutally honest, I don't know too much about Latifi. However, I think that Russell will beat him. I think George Russell's just a consummate professional. He's young, but he's so mature for his age, and I think that he's a good, solid driver.
I agree with you on that. I think Russell will beat Latifi. I don't think he'll whitewash him like he did to Kubica, but I think he will beat Latifi, and if he has a good season, I think this will be his last season with Williams, and he'll get the call up to Mercedes for 2021.
I don't know about that much yet, because we still have to see how the season pans out, but I think right now with where Williams are, with all due respect to them, Russell's too good to be in a team that's so far behind. I think he needs to be in at least a strong middle of the pack team that can at least fight for consistent points.
So do you think he needs another step before Mercedes?
I think that would be ideal if you could go to like a Force India maybe and just go up against
Racing Point.
I still, now all these seasons on, and there'll always be Force India to me. I'm sorry always.
Are you sure your name's not Kimi Räikkönen?
Could be. I would like it if it was. But Racing Point, sorry. I think that a team like that would be a good fit for him, for him to grow a bit more.
Okay, we touched on Haas. In terms of them, do you see them moving further up the grid?
I do. I don't think that Romain Grosjean will improve. But I do feel like Magnussen still got a lot of speed left in him. And he is quite a raw driver. He'll always be a raw diamond, but he's still a diamond, rough diamond, I should say. So I believe that if they can just sort out the issues that they had from last season, and I think that Gunther Steiner is a really good team manager, and I'm sure that they've worked really hard to perform better this season. So I feel like they can do better.
Okay, and then that being said, it means you think Magnussen beats Grosjean there.
And it'll be much further up the standings.
I'll agree that Magnussen does beat him. I think Grosjean won't be as bad as he was last season, but I also think it'll be his last season in F1.
Possibly.
Yeah, moving on to Alfa Romeo. Towards the end of last season, I felt that Giovinazzi showed a lot of improvement, and Kimi was consistent throughout. With a slight drop off maybe towards the end of the season, but in the car they had, I thought he did well.
Yeah, Kimi, doesn't matter how old he gets, he just keeps producing the results. He's just got so much raw talent, and it's still there. And now it's obviously mixed with all the experience. I was really impressed with actually his season last season with the amount of points that he scored, and I felt like he carried the team in the first half of the season single-handedly. But I don't think Alfa Romeo did a bad job last season. I think they actually did a really good job. And yeah, Giovinazzi, if you remember, he wasn't scoring points, but he wasn't putting in bad performances. It was like he was pretty unlucky. He was having 80% of his race would be really good, and then something would happen in that last 10-20%. But he managed, it was only his first season in F1, and he was going up against someone who has won a world championship and started in 2001. So I think that he came good, but he still has, for me, he still actually has to do a lot more to prove that he needs to stay in F1.
As a whole, I can't really see them moving up the standings because they kind of finished in the middle of nowhere. In 8th place, they were quite far off racing points ahead of them and comfortably ahead of Haas, and I can't see them really closing the gap to those midfield teams. I think they'll have another solid season. How do you
Yeah, they will have another solid season, but in that same space, however, they will prove in their own space, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So they won't get closer, and they probably won't get further from the team behind, but they will
still take a step forward?
Yeah, they'll still take a step forward somewhere, definitely.
And the final thing on Alfa Romeo, I think that it'll be Kimi Räikkönen's last season in F1. I don't think he will take another year on his contract, and I do think he will beat Giovinazzi again.
Yes, he will definitely beat Giovinazzi. How old is he now? Isn't he turning 40 this year? Or is it 41?
I think he's 41 this year.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, he's described F1 as his hobby. I don't know how many drivers have described it as their hobby, but I just feel like this would be his last season.
And will be a sad loss to the grid, but he's a great driver and we'll always love him.
I always love Kimi. He's always been my favorite driver. Ever since the early 2000s, his championship's my favorite. But not criticism, but being in F1 is like amazing privilege. It's a privilege that very, very few people get. And I don't want people in the sport with that attitude of, this is my hobby. I want every single driver in there, whether in the worst team or the best team, to have that undying hunger to win. Because that's what makes F1 F1.
Yeah, and it's a seat that doesn't come along any day. Like, there are only 20 of them, and the sport at this point seems unlikely to expand. So it's a seat that could be taken up by a hungry young driver, and I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Moving on to Racing Point, who've come under a lot of criticism for basically having Mercedes' car from last season. That being said, there is no rule about it. As a customer team, they are allowed to basically buy the chassis of another team, and it's now made them strong favorites to be best of the rest. What are your thoughts on this?
You know that my favorite driver is Perez, and that with him at the wheel, I think anything is possible because he's still so good and he has experience. And you know, Haas did it as well with the Ferrari, didn't they? Because their car looks suspiciously like the previous Ferrari as well. So I don't think they're not my favorite team, but I think they should come under criticisms for that. But that man Lance Stroll, I think that he'll be a liability because his qualifying is poor. And I feel like if they are gonna finish best of the race, Perez has to do his Perez thing of just a consistent season, that shock podium that he always manages to get in Baku, and solid points after that, 7th or 6th.
With Lance Stroll, I think the only criticism of him is qualifying, because on race day he genuinely does well, and he makes a lot of overtakes, mainly because he does start further back than he should. But if he can sort out his qualifying, he is a strong driver, and he comes under a lot of criticism, but you know that I think he is a good driver and he can do well, and especially if they have a good car.
Okay, yeah. If he sorts out the qualifying, because I will give you this, he's very good at overtaking. I think it was in Canada last year where he came from the back to score points in his home race under that pressure. And there's a curse with Canadian drivers in the Canadian race. Just ask Jacques Villeneuve and he'll tell you all about it. But that's besides the point. I think that if him and Perez can combine good performances throughout the season and share the responsibility, and Lance Stroll sorts out his qualifying, mixed with his racecraft, they could really do well this season.
So who do you think will finish ahead? I assume you're going to agree with me and say Perez?
Yeah, definitely Perez. And Lance Stroll's not a bad driver, but I think Perez would beat almost any driver.
Moving on to the newly rebranded Alfa Tauri. Before we even talk about the performance of this team, I think they will go down as one of the most beautifully liveried cars ever. I think that car is up there with the Marlboro McLaren and the JPS Lotus as one of the most beautiful cars to ever grace the Formula One grid.
I was about to say we're gonna have to rewrite that article that we wrote right in the beginning about the best liveries, but it looks really good. It looks cool, but I don't know if it's as great as you say. I'm not saying this is nearly as good as this livery now, but last year's when they were still Toro Rosso, I really loved last year's livery. That blue with the
red.
Yeah.
It was a really good livery, but it's something that they've now moved away from, and I think like a lot of people were skeptical and thought they might just re-release it under the Alfa Tauri name, but I'm very glad that they didn't. And moving on to performance, how do you see Alfa Tauri doing this season?
Well, they had a really strong season last season under Toro Rosso name. They scored a lot of points, a lot more points than I really thought they were capable of. And I think that they landed up with 2 podiums that season, if I'm not correct.
Yes,
one out of each driver.
Well, they had 3 drivers, and two of them got podiums because
Kvyat
Albon moved on.
Gasly.
Yes.
That Kvyat podium is one of my favorites. In fact, that whole podium was amazing in Germany. But that's not the point. The point is that I think that they will build on from that season, have a really good season, and they look like they've got a fresh energy about them. And they knew. I know that they were the sister team or the junior team for Red Bull, but whenever you looked at them, that was the first thing that popped into your mind. And this rebrand has like the power to help them position themselves differently in Formula One.
Yeah, they will still be a sister team under a different name, but the fact that the livery is now different, it really makes a big difference. And the fact that Toro Rosso means Red Bull in Italian, they now can sort of not be so closely associated with the main team. Moving on to their performance, how do you see Toro Rosso doing this season?
I just see them building on from last season. I don't know if there will be 2 podiums, but I think they'll score a lot more points, and it's going to be interesting to see. I'm so glad that they have Kvyat still. I think he had a good season last season, and I'm hoping he has another good season. Gasly, not too sure what happened with him, but
I think he had a really good season. Well, the second half of the season.
Yeah, when he came back, he became good again. So he probably will have a good season again.
I think they'll have a really good season, and I think it's a very difficult battle to call between Kvyat and Gasly. I know a lot of people expect Gasly to win, but I think Kvyat looked really good since returning, and he could win it. I would say Kvyat actually beats Gasly.
Yeah, you and I don't agree or like the same things in common, but you and I both like Daniel Kvyat, and we both unanimously agree that he was chopped and changed too early. And he came really good last season. It was so nice to see. So I think he's only going to have a better season this season. So it'll be really close because Pierre Gasly still has a point to prove to get back into Red Bull, and he is a good driver, but Kvyat. I say Kvyat.
So you also say Kvyat. Yeah, moving on to another one that's going to be really interesting. Esteban Ocon versus Daniel Ricciardo.
Renault, right. What do you think? Okay, let's first of all talk about Renault. I don't know. It's going to be difficult to see for me to predict what type of season they'll have. Because last season was underwhelming, and it could be the same, but I think they need to show a lot more improvement if they're going to be the team to take the reins in 2021.
You say that they had an underwhelming year, but the fact that we're only talking about them now means that they beat all the teams we've already spoken about, and they were really in the midfield battle until late in the season, and McLaren only secured 4th with a few races to go. So they didn't have as bad a season, it's just that we had very high expectations of them. So if they can just get back to that level where they expect to be, I think they would have then had a good season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's so much opportunity that lies ahead for Renault, and there's a lot of pressure on them to. I feel like they're the team that's tipped to become the next like powerhouses of F1, but that's a huge amount of pressure to have. I think that they should not worry so much about that and just focus on just having a good season, something that they can build from for 2021.
Okay, moving on to that difficult discussion about who's going to win their inter-team battle.
I'd say Ricciardo. I don't think it's that difficult. I think Ricciardo. Don't forget, he never had a break in F1 like Ocon did, so he still has to find form again in F1. He is very consistent and very good, but Ricciardo's quick, he's more experienced, he's had a longer time in F1, and he didn't have that break, so for me it's Ricciardo.
I agree with you. I think like the F1 community really likes Ocon and believes that he is a champion of the future, but I think having a season out makes a big difference to a person's career and their familiarity with the car, and also he's at a new team. I think it'll make a big difference for him, and he won't be the Esteban Ocon we knew at Force India.
Okay.
He will probably improve a lot throughout the season and get closer to Ricciardo, but I agree that Ricciardo will win their battle.
Alright, since you're such a massive McLaren fan of the highest caliber, I will do the review on their season and then ask your very unbiased opinion of them. So I think that McLaren had just an unbelievable season last season. I don't think anyone foresaw them getting their driver pairing so right. They have the use of Lando Norris, I think, is quick but is learning, but he gets along so well with Carlos Sainz, who is such a talented driver. I mean, he really is. I think he's so underrated as well. Those two combined perfectly. They raced each other on the track, but they weren't idiots about it, and they did what was best for the team. And it's just so rare where you get that type of relationship where they respect each other so much. The only thing I can remember of a relationship like that is Ricciardo and Max. But yeah, I think that they had a great season, and if you think about how much they improved from where they were, it was unbelievable. And a bit of controversy, but I think the best thing that happened to them was when Fernando Alonso left the team, because they could focus on the team and not on Alonso anymore, and it worked for them. And I think that all they can do is just carry that on to the season.
I think they did have an unbelievable season, and it was so good that I would, as a McLaren fan, I'd accept if we just had the same again, and no improvement. In fact, like obviously the car has to improve, but because everyone's improving, if they had to just hold their position within the grid, I would be happy with that. And it shows stability, because you can't just have an up season and a down season. Like we spoke about Renault, they didn't meet the expectations, they didn't build on what they had. Whereas McLaren now have this chance where they find themselves in the same situation Renault were in. And all they need to do is just have a solid season and consolidate fourth.
I agree, because if you think about it, even just repeating what they did last season and getting another podium would still constitute as a successful season and an improvement, just getting that consistency back. If you think about where they were from 2015 and 16, which was, no offense, and 2017 hopeless. 2018 was a bit better, but last season was such a massive improvement. If they just kept that, I would tip them to go back to dominating F1 the way they did and be the new powerhouses over Renault. They look a lot better right now to me than Renault does to me. So, yeah, and I love the drivers as well.
Did you know that it was the first time in the hybrid era that McLaren scored 100 points in a season? And they didn't just scrape that 100, they had 145 points. And no other team below them, Renault being fifth, reached 100 points. So they comfortably finished fourth.
Yeah.
But they were still nearly 300 points behind Red Bull. So obviously a step needs to be taken towards Red Bull in the front three.
Speaking in all objectivity, a lot of steps have to be taken.
Yes, a lot of steps.
That's a huge gap.
Yes, steps have to be taken forward, but the goal is still to be fourth. And that will only change in 2021 when there's a regulation shake-up. But for this season, fourth would be the goal, and I would be happy with fourth. And going on to their battle, inter-team battle, I think Sainz takes it. Norris is great, but we spoke about this the other day. If next season they were to become title contenders, would they allow their drivers to have a fair shot at it, or would they put all their eggs in one basket? I think they go and back Sainz, because I think Sainz is so underrated and he's a great driver who just never got his chance in a big team and a championship contending car. I think he was unfairly treated at Red Bull and in the Red Bull family. Although Kvyat is the one who everyone thinks about because Kvyat got his chance and then was cut, Sainz never even got the chance. All because of a little niggle that he and Verstappen had when they were Toro Rosso teammates. And I think that was really unfair on him. And for his sake, not just as a McLaren fan, I hope that he gets a championship contending car one day.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make the prediction right now. 2021, McLaren will win the championship.
Well, you and I have this bet, me as a McLaren fan, you as a Ferrari fan, that McLaren will win the championship before Ferrari, and I stand by it.
I'm starting to think like that as well, but it's not deviate too much. Yeah, you'd have to back Sainz, in my opinion, because Norris is still learning the game. He was pretty open about it when he was being interviewed by Jenson Button. He just said that he still needs to learn how to speak to engineers and really ask them for what he wants from the car. So he's really good. We have so much to learn, and he's still so young. It makes so much sense to just back Sainz because he's experienced, he's quick, and if he was put in that Red Bull car, he would do an excellent job. I think he would even go as far as to challenge Max more than other teammates do.
Well, with Norris, we forget that it was also his first season. And unlike someone like Charles Leclerc, who had a season at Alfa to build himself and get himself used to Formula One, he was just thrown into a big team. Norris just went straight into McLaren and had to learn from there. And to be as close to Sainz as he was throughout the season, from day one, he was close to Sainz. He was never really better than Sainz, but he was always within touching distance. That says a lot about how good Norris is. Moving on to the top three, starting with Red Bull. How do you see Red Bull performing this season?
Well, I think that everyone feels like they are the ones this season that's going to challenge Mercedes. I
agree with that. I think Red Bull are the team that can challenge Mercedes, because I think Red Bull will go all the eggs in one basket and obviously back Verstappen, whereas Ferrari won't. Ferrari will still have their squabbles within their team.
The thing for me, and I don't think anyone will agree with me, but I stand by it, I always feel like a huge part of the hype of Red Bull is Max. And he's very talented, and I've always rated him, even when he was struggling a couple of years ago. But last season, I think he had a great season, and he's the perfect title contender. He's self-confident, he's highly talented, he's become consistent now, he has 100% belief in himself, he has that number one driver mentality about himself that you need, that selfishness. But it's not about the drivers, it's about Red Bull. They actually need to come to the party now, because I felt like ever since they stopped winning, they've let drivers down in promising. They've hired drivers and they've promised them that glory. You know, Ricciardo, I thought deserved a championship winning car or fighting car, didn't get it. I felt like Max this whole time has deserved it, and he hasn't gotten it yet. And they have the most talented drivers, but they actually need to come to the party. Christian Horner is one of the best team bosses in F1 history. I have no doubt about that. What he's done with Red Bull is just simply phenomenal. But he's got it left in him to win one more constructors, but he has to deliver it now. And I think this is a great opportunity this season.
Well, I feel that based on last season, the progress they made during last season, and the progress that Honda especially made, that they can have a championship winning car this season. And with Max and them backing Max fully, they don't need to be better than Mercedes. They should be close enough to Mercedes for Max to challenge Lewis, and they can then win a championship. I don't think they can win a constructors championship. I think they can win the drivers championship.
Yeah, I'll probably go with that as well. But what I was gonna say, sorry, I actually just lost my train of thought. I'm trying to get it back now. I think that Albon is gonna. He's not gonna have a great season, in a sense that he will perform and do well, but I wonder how I would be pretty worried if I was Alexander Albon right now, because I really rate him as a driver. He's a great driver. He's really good under pressure. He can overtake. He can perform. He's consistent. But no matter how good Max's teammate is, he's usually better. And they're going to go with 100% Max. And if Albon plays his part and, doesn't accept second driver, but supports the team when he has to, then he solidifies that position and it'll be over for him.
The problem he has now is that he's already in a second driver position and he hasn't even had a chance to battle Max. He's already just been put into that position. You can't even say he's like in a Mark Webber situation, because Webber had a chance to race Vettel at the start, and only after he was beaten did he become a second driver.
Yeah.
Albon hasn't even had that chance, and I think it's very unfair on him. I think he's a great driver, but that's the way it is, and that's the way it will stay.
Yeah, it will. And with all due respect, I love Rubens Barrichello, but I think Albon could turn into another Rubens. Very fast, very talented, more than capable of winning his own races and championships. Maybe not to the extent that his number one teammate does, but still very good. Possibly being a team that's the best team again, but just there's that one guy that's just better than him and better than everyone. And it's unfair, but it's how it is.
I think the Rubens analogy is perfect, because Rubens also was just never given the opportunity to race against Michael. And it's because Michael was there and established already, and it's the same with Max. But like the Rubens and Max analogy, Max is so good, and that a good teammate still isn't going to beat him. So we've touched on the fact that Red Bull will probably be title contenders ahead of Ferrari. How do you see Ferrari going?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know there's just a lack of cohesion in Ferrari that's making them make careless mistakes. I feel like since 2017 they've just been categorized by just lots of careless mistakes, not only from their drivers but from the management as well. I like Mattia Binotto. I think that he's a good team boss, but yeah, still needs to be quite a few, I think, overhauls, even major overhauls of Ferrari, the way they do things. Unfortunately, they're quite stuck in their ways. So I was feeling that if Seb came back in with a renewed figure and he realized he had to change the way he did things, that they would have a chance. But there's just, with their drivers, they're going to be constantly at battle. I know Charles is so good and there's no ways he'll accept second driver status. The same with Seb, because he's so used to being a first driver. So I just think that they're going to cancel each other out.
The thing with Seb is he's never been a second driver, because in his first season he won a race at Toro Rosso, and he then obviously was promoted to the first team, and he had a season of being title contender, and then won championship after championship. And obviously a four-time champion is never going to be a second driver. And as much as people say he's past his best and his driving isn't as good as it was, his hunger to win is still there, and it's clear to see. And what I loved about Seb was last season he didn't just lie down and die. He fought back and proved to Ferrari and Charles that he's still there and he still wants to be the number one driver. And I think that in the end is going to be their downfall. I think they'll battle each other and probably crash more, and if they don't crash, they're going to be taking points off each other, while Mercedes will, if need be, back Hamilton. We've seen them do it. Verstappen will be backed by Red Bull, and only if Mercedes are clearly far ahead will they allow Bottas to challenge Lewis. Whereas at Ferrari, even if they want to do that, firstly, they don't know who to pick between Charles and Seb, and secondly, whoever they don't pick won't accept it. Charles will battle Seb whether Ferrari wants him to or not, and Seb will do the same. So I think in the end, having such a strong driver pairing is going to be their downfall.
Yeah, that's the thing about F1, is that you have to get the driver pairing so right if you're a top team, a competitive team, to a point where your number one driver has to be like nigh perfect, but the number two not good enough to really challenge, or to challenge him but not beat him, but still be way better than everyone else. So the tricky part is that number two. But the thing is, in Ferrari, they haven't got that right. So I think that they're just going to be their own worst enemy.
And the strange thing is, Ferrari have never been in this situation before. Ferrari have always been a team that has had a 1 and a 2, and it's been clear from day one who the 1 and the 2 is. They were probably the pioneers of doing it, and now they find themselves in a situation they've never been in before. So I think on top of all the problems they have with their illegal engine and whatnot, they have a problem they've never faced before. In their 70-year history, they've now have a new problem. And I think in the end, they're going to end up third in the championship. They might actually have both drivers finish ahead of Albon, but overall, I think they will, in the running order, be third, even if they're not third in the constructor standings.
All I hope from Ferrari this season is that they sort out their race strategy and their pit stop strategies. This business of getting wrong compounds for weathers. I mean, if you can't even see what compound of tire to put on, then I don't know. For qualifying, I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay, so we've said they have an incredible driver pairing and they are going to battle each other the whole season. If I ask you right now, who do you think, before we've had a practice session or anything, who do you think will finish ahead? Just an answer. No reason, just Charles or Seb.
I think Seb, but it won't be enough.
It won't be enough, meaning he'll finish ahead of Charles, but he won't win a championship.
I think that it won't be enough in the sense that unless things go phenomenally right for him this season, I just think that he'll either leave Ferrari or leave F1 altogether and just cash in. He's had a monumental career, but I just feel like he just doesn't have it. Not doesn't have it anymore, but he's tired now.
So I think that Charles will win their battle, and with Seb leaving Ferrari and whatnot, all the talk, I can't see Seb going anywhere else. So if Seb doesn't stay at Ferrari, I think he leaves F1. And it's sad, but like with Kimi, it has to happen. People get old and they have to move on.
But he's still pretty young though.
Yeah, we only say that because Kimi's 41. Kimi's the outlier here.
No, well, I mean, Alonso went to 37. Jenson Button went to 36, 37 as well.
Yeah, well, Seb is about 33 now.
Yeah, he's still got 3 seasons left in him, if you ask me, before.
Yeah, but Seb's not the type of person to go and be a second driver for 3 seasons, even at his age. He just won't accept it mentally, even if...
No, he won't accept it.
Even if physically he is a second driver to Charles, mentally he doesn't have it in him to drive for someone else.
His only option, or his only hope, right, and it's a very slim hope, is if somehow there's a vacancy at Mercedes.
I don't think there will. Well, if there is, the vacancy is going to be Lewis Hamilton's teammate, and that's another thing that Seb won't do, because then he's got to come into a team that has been with Lewis Hamilton for 7 years and try and take that crown off him.
I just really want to see them as teammates.
Yeah, I think it will.
Because you know that you and I both know, or both feel like behind the scenes they actually really like each other.
I think they do like each other.
A lot, actually.
Yes.
Way more than rivals of that magnitude should.
Yes, but I don't think that they'll ever be teammates. I don't think Lewis would want it. I don't think Seb would want it. I think partly because Lewis wants to be the number 1 driver and Seb would never be 2 and would want to battle, but also because of what happened with Rosberg. People forget that Lewis and Rosberg were really good friends. And they were childhood friends until they became title rivals. And I think Lewis and Seb have such a good friendship that they wouldn't want to ruin it and battle each other within a team to the point where Hamilton and Rosberg are, where they don't even talk to each other. And they just purely hate each other. So I don't see Seb going to Mercedes, and I can't see Seb going back to a midfield team. So if Charles does beat him, I think it's over for Seb, and I think he'll retire.
Yeah, I don't know what else he can do.
Okay, and finally, the Mercedes. Can you see them being beaten?
No. But I'm not even worried about that this season because I don't think there's any point. There's a sense of inevitability about it. But I am very interested to still see Valtteri. I think that a lot of people are just giving up on Valtteri, despite that he had a bit of a resurgence season last season. But I just think that if there's a couple of things that Valtteri could iron out, he could be a champion. One of the biggest things is that the guy has to stop being inconsistent. You can't just drop off the radar when he wants. He has to be there making the best of every single race. But if you think about it, there's a lot that's good about Valtteri. He's got a great qualifier. His race starts are very good, which is, I think, for a lot of drivers that are considered second team drivers, I think if you all look at him, there's a pattern of they've all been bad race starters. But even though he's played a second driver, well, he's great at race starts. He can control a race. I mean, when that guy's in the lead, generally he wins. And he's also learned to grab the lead early on within a race, like in the first couple of laps. So I think there's a lot that's coming right with him, and he's a naturally quick driver. If he was just like this consistently, I actually think he could win a championship. So that's why I'm excited about Mercedes.
I think with Valtteri, I touched on it earlier that I think if Russell has a good season, Mercedes will give Russell the second seat in 2021. I think Valtteri is now driving for his career. Like 100% he is driving for his seat, because I think they have given him fair chances, in 2018 not being one of those, but I think he had a fair shot at it last season, and they never asked him to move aside or anything for Lewis, not that I can recall.
Okay, in Singapore they told him to stay behind him.
Okay, that was in the situation where they had lost the race. They knew they were just trying to score many points as they could. In that, if Valtteri continued his pace that day, Lewis would have lost an extra position. So that was a sensible thing to do. But I think in terms of the title battle, they gave him a fair shot at it, and this will be the last time they do it. And I think if he gets obliterated by Hamilton again, and he's nowhere close to the pace, they won't keep him for 2021. So I think Valtteri is driving for his career right now.
But you say right now, but he's always been driving for his career ever since he moved to Mercedes. The issue for him is that I think mentally he's also gotten a lot stronger. I think he's coming like almost the perfect pairing for Lewis. But unfortunately for him, there's a lot of good drivers that can take his place, especially Russell. Ocon used to be one, but he's left the Mercedes family. But I know there's a lot of junior drivers, but there's someone else. Is there no one else in the...
There's no one that I can think of off my head, but I think George Russell's the first guy in the queue.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think he has proved already in one season in a bad car that he is a good driver.
But I would be even after being in F1 for a couple of seasons, in fact, I would still be nervous to promote Russell to a team, because Russell's good, but up against Lewis Hamilton, it could actually like destroy his confidence. That's why I think he should go into a mid-field team, and then
I think what should happen is he goes next to Lewis and he learns from Lewis for 2 seasons, knowing he's the second driver for 2 seasons, so that when Lewis leaves, they have a guy who's already been in the team, who's familiar with how the team is run, and who's learned from arguably the greatest driver ever, and can then just fill those shoes and step in comfortably.
I've often wondered, a very hypothetical sense, of always asked myself this question, and I'm being serious, and I want to know if a big team, right, like Mercedes or Ferrari or Red Bull came to you and they were winning, like the way Mercedes is now, and they said you just have to be a second driver or number 2 driver for 2 seasons, and as soon as the number 1 driver goes, you are guaranteed 100% back to be number 1. Would you take it?
I think it's a no-brainer. You have to take it. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, it sounds like a no-brainer, but
I mean, it's just 2 seasons.
Yeah,
you're then pretty much guaranteed.
So much happens in F1, but at 2 seasons time, they could change their minds. I mean, F1 teams it's not that they're not allowed to change their
mind.
mind.
If you were to go into Mercedes now as a second driver, even if in 2 seasons you don't get to win your driver's championship, you're going to win 2 constructors championships, and you're going to be part of a winning team.
Yeah, I guess you don't have a choice but to take it. But you still have to prove yourself, even if you're the second driver.
Yes, obviously.
Even with the assurances, you still have to show that they made the right choice.
We've gone a bit off topic there, but going back to Mercedes, Hamilton and Bottas, you say you'd like to see if Bottas can win a championship. And I think with this battle with Hamilton, I think if he beats Hamilton, he wins a championship. So can Valtteri beat Hamilton?
I really want to say yes. I think if he has a season of his life, then maybe, but Lewis is such a wild world.
I think the fact that you say he has a season of his life and it's still a maybe proves that it's a no. I don't think he can. I think he's just a little bit too far behind him. And I think even at his best, it's still so close that it takes one misstep for Valtteri and Lewis wins.
But I think, okay, just as a closing note for me, I understand what you're saying, but I feel if it was Ricciardo or Charles Leclerc, they would have so much talent that in the season of their lives, they could beat, not a maybe, but they could beat Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, I do think there are other drivers on the grid who, if they were teammates with Hamilton, could beat him in their best season. And beat him by a margin if they had their best season. And I don't think Valtteri's one of them. Sadly,
and Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I think Verstappen, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Vettel could all beat him on their best season. Over a season, if they performed at their best, they could beat Hamilton. But I just don't think Valtteri is one of those people. And so I think Lewis Hamilton wins the Mercedes battle and another championship, equaling Schumacher and surpassing the 91 wins along the way, and becoming the statistical greatest Formula One driver ever. And the final thing I want to do is for us to each give 3 random predictions on what we think will happen this season. Now, I know I haven't given you any warning on this, so I'll go first. I'm actually going to give you 4. I'm going to give it to you in one line. I think Williams will score more than 1 point. McLaren will score more than 1 podium. Red Bull will win more than 1 race. And Mercedes will win more than 1 championship.
I love it. I think that McLaren will win a race this season.
I'd love that.
I'm pretty confident, actually, that McLaren will win a race, and Carlos Sainz will be a race winner for McLaren. And the second thing, I think that Ferrari will get it right from as a team perspective, but the drivers will let them down. It won't be the team's fault, it'll just be the drivers, which even as a long time Ferrari fan, I won't lie, would be pretty funny because that's quite ironic. And the third thing, I think that Max will win 5 or more races this season.
I think I want to watch the season you've just predicted. As a McLaren fan, I'd love to see a race win, Ferrari throw in the bin again, and Verstappen really take it to Hamilton. I think I'd prefer your 3 than my 3.
I love our predictions, but you made 4, so I want to throw in one more prediction for you. I believe that these F1 2020 cars will be the best Formula 1 cars we've seen performance-wise in almost all areas in the history of F1, because even when you look at the bottom field teams or those lower to middle order teams, the cars just look so planted. There's so much grip there. They're taking corners almost flat out in Spain. The straight line speed looks pretty good, but just the aerodynamics, the way that they're translating that power, especially through the corners, it looks like it's on train tracks. Like, it's amazing.
So you're saying that almost every race this season will see a new track record in Q3. The pole position time this season will set a track record at almost every race.
Yeah. I mean, almost like that. I think these cars are so good, and the reason why I feel like this is because Ross Brawn is in the picture. I don't care in what role or what capacity Ross Brawn, when he's involved in F1, generally things are good. And I think he's had an influence in the just the overall shape and design of all these F1 cars. And I think that he's already placed a few changes in rules, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure that they've done some work already to make cars closer to follow. And I just feel like these cars, the way that they take the corners, the way that they drive, the way drivers get so much grip from them, they look so smooth.
Let us know in the comments section how you feel the season will go, whether you agree or disagree with our predictions, and let us know your predictions for the season. Remember to click like and subscribe, and thank you all for listening.